Now, I've been working on the jig for a while, and what I've started with is the basic alignment diagram that's in the manual, which gives key measurements in relation to the body. A lot of them are using the floor line as the datum or reference point, and in the case of this top diagram, the centre line of the car. Now, from all the research I've done on the creation of a jig, the important thing seems to be to follow the alignment and basically build the jig on the basis of assembling a car according to those dimensions. So what I've done, I'm using 100 by 50 millimeter main supports, same as the cross members where I need them. That's not actually a cross member at the moment, it's just sitting there. On top of that, those rails, I sit 40 by 40 tube, square tube. That's not welded, it just sits on top, and that in itself sits on the, not sure what they're called, but the supporting sections under the floor, the bits that the engine frame go into here. Now, the reason I've done that is that I can move that 40 by 40 out, which then gives a space between the actual floor line and the jig itself. That's for when you want to paint it. But when you're assembling the new floors, you can slide that piece in, and that will actually provide an alignment point for the support structure of the new floors. Also, on this jig, I've got some angle there. None of this is permanently in place yet, which goes up to the reaction frame bolt that goes through the engine frame and also the floor frame. That will, I'll probably bolt that onto the main beam there. That will provide a reference point, so when all that's removed, I've only got to align that hole with the hole in the subframe. So that's basically how the front end's done. Certainly at the bottom end. At the top end, I intend to leave these engine frames in place and support it above the engine frame. Reason for that is that I've actually got to replace the end plate here. It's all rusted out, and also I'm replacing the front of the bulkhead here, both sides. So pretty much from the top of the bulkhead here down has to be replaced. So there's nothing for the traditional engine mount design to mount to. So I'll be mounting it from the top only, at least to start with, back to the main support structure, and then I'll use the engine frame as a positioning device for this section here, and also it'll help align the new floor section, so I'll be able to fit the engine frame up in its correct position with a reaction plate in place, so I know that everything fits perfectly, and then the subframe underneath will slide onto the end of the engine frame, so it just makes it easier to align. At the rear, using the standard approach that seems to be done, the IRS mounting point here seems to be consistently used. It's got 4 bolts, 2 here and 2 over there. Once again, the reference point, according to the alignment diagram, is the actual floor line, which is somewhere along here, what's left of it. There is a measurement for that. The measurement for that is, at the moment, is reflected in that temporary bar there. So that's now set at the right height. So when I put the proper cross frame in, which is this one here, I'll put a similar support with a 100 by 50 vertical section up into here, which will be welded onto there and bolted onto here. Then, because of the way it's designed, once again, when I want to use a reference point to the floor, when I'm putting the floor in, all I have to do is to put a 30mm square section on the top of the main cross beam, and then that will line up eventually with the floor. So that gives me another datum point. So all I'm doing at this stage is getting all the pieces in place. I'm tack welding or clamping until I'm sure of the position. Then when I'm sure of the position, I'll actually tack weld other pieces, then drop it down and then weld it up. So that's the stage that I'm at this stage. The thickness of the main beam and the cross beam, 2.5mm. The angle here is also 2.5mm. It should be strong enough. There's not a lot of weight in the body, but that should be strong enough to stop any flex. So, just to recap, the jig itself will enable the body to be pretty well pulled apart, which, and I'm looking at it here, all of this has to come out. All of this is being replaced. New inner outer sills, new floors. A lot of the transmission tunnel has to be repaired, so I may indeed pull that out to repair it. The front bulkheads have to be taken out and replaced. You can see there my 40 by 40 square section just sitting on top of the beam here. That's only there to provide a positioning point for the frame. And you can see the frame just there below the rust hole, sitting on top of it. So that's the design. I'll keep going till I've satisfied I've got all the measurements right, and as I say, then I'll weld it up. Then I have to look at how then that will be mounted onto the onto a rotisserie. I'll provide another update video when I actually work out how I'm going to attach this cross angle here to the main support. So I'll show what I've done there. I've pulled the jig off the car. The welds are all temporary, just tacked in place, including these two positioning points for the front of the floor. What I'm going to do is to make sure that this jig is completely flat, and that's the reason I've got it flat on the garage floor. At the moment where I've tacked it up, it's a little bit out of square at the rear, so I need to reposition that and re-weld it on the floor. The measurements are right. The rear suspension point here, that's all ready to weld up. I've made the mounts on either side. I just haven't got them in here at the moment. But I need to weld these inner plates permanently in place. So at this stage I've got it out from the car so I can properly weld it up. I may put another cross member across here, and I'm certainly putting one across in here the way I'm designing the support for the front. I'll put some gussets across the corners, maybe a bit of an overkill, but I certainly don't want anything to move once I've got everything in place. So at this stage, just a bit of straightening up and a lot of welding. This is a jig so far. I've just been welding up the frame, the main frame. As I said before, I'd only tack welded it in place. I've now reinforced the corners, put some braces across the middle there, braces across the back there. The rear suspension mount is made. I've just got to drill the brackets there to go on. That's now done. That's in the right position. The brackets here, these actually go into the hole, lines up with the hole that goes through the subframe just behind the reaction frame or reaction plate. So that's there to position this jig onto the body. So it's all welded up. As I say, I've finished the rear. I've now got to do the mounting for the front of the car, so I'll slide it back under the car and bolt it back up. Bolt the rear frame up, locate this onto the subframe of the front where the reaction plate goes, and then I'll start to build the front mounting frame for the car. So that's the next part of the job. The front part of the mounting has now been completed. What I've done is to put some braces to stop movement. I've put gussets on the corners here to stop movement, and also down the bottom. This whole piece here just unbolts. Obviously it's bolted 2 bolts on that side, 2 in the centre and 2 on that side, and then it's bolted to the frame down the bottom here. So it can all be unbolted and lifted off. The centre support here, I've really put that there to provide some added holding strength. It's probably not needed, but it may be possible for me to remove this, leave that in place once I've got the new floors in and held them in place there, that I might be able to invert the car without having this on. I don't know yet. The design of this is that it doesn't mount onto the engine frame mounts. That's where the engine frame mounts are there. That's obviously down in there. But what it does enable me to do is that I can fit the engine frame around this mount. I did that on purpose so I could actually use the engine frames to help position the floor and also the outer mounting point there. So this doesn't restrict me fitting the engine frames and removing them, of course. What else? I think that's about it. It should be strong enough. As I say, I've braced it top, bottom. This is 3mm section tube, so it's quite strong. I'm fairly confident it should work. So this is now complete. Only one more bolt I've just got to drill through on the bottom there, but it's now complete, and I'll start onto the rotisserie component of it. Obviously I've got to mount a pivot post on here. The pivot height, I've played around with different thoughts on that, but from what I've seen, people tend to mount them basically in the centre of the rear number plate, whatever height that happens to be. For me, that's about 300mm above the top of the frame here. So I'll probably use that as a starting point, and I might go, say, 30mm either side of that point. So it'll put its pivot point somewhere just around about that height there. Now I'll mount that so it'll be adjustable up or down by 30mm, so I can actually get the proper balance. But at this point this is ready. I'll now take this off because what I want to do is to clean up all around the mounting points. So I'll clean the firewall here and also under the rear where the IRS mounting plates are. So I'll do that, and I'll probably just paint up the welds just to clean that up, and then I'll start on the rotisserie.